Did you know that a race of superhumans is missing from our lineage? Let's go over the evolution of man that science taught us. Humans came from a trail of Australopithecus down to Homo sapiens, but in 2008, a strange finger bone was found in the Denisova cave. This bone did not match any tests attempting to relate it to the known hierarchy of evolution. Instead, it led to more evidence from a strange civilization that history just happened to omit. What is this civilization? Is there more proof of their existence? What happened to them? We'll find out together in this new episode of Secret Origins. Welcome. It all started with something small. So small you could have mistaken it for nothing. In 2008, deep inside Siberia's Denisova cave, archaeologists pulled a tiny fragment of bone from the soil. When they unearthed this bone, they didn't expect much. Maybe a Neanderthal scrap, or perhaps a modern human. But they were so wrong. When geneticists sequenced the DNA, they froze. This wasn't Neanderthal. It wasn't Homo sapiens either. It was something else entirely. A new kind of human that no one had ever seen before. That little bone belonged to a young girl who lived about 50,000 years ago, and it was found in no other place than a cave known as the Denisovan Cave. Because of how strange this bone was, scientists realized that there could be more from where that came, so they called her kind the Denisovans. Suddenly, our neat family tree of us and the Neanderthals exploded into chaos. Why not? There was now proof that another human species had walked the earth alongside us. Not just that, there was a fat chance that they were equally sophisticated and powerful. And yet, despite the staggering evidence, there is no mention of them in our history books. If you've never heard of the Denisovans before, you're far from alone. The shocking part: more testing has proved that their DNA is everywhere. Studies propose that modern people from Tibet, Mongolia, Papua New Guinea, and Australia may carry up to 5% Denisovan DNA in their blood. That's not a minor detail. That's a full-blown lineage, an entire species that no longer exists except inside us. And here's the kicker. While Neanderthals left dozens of skeletons, Denisovans left almost nothing. A pinky bone, a few molars, a jawbone high on the Tibetan plateau, a possible skull in China. That's it. Yet somehow they contributed massively to our genome. So how does a species powerful enough to rewire our DNA leave no trace in the dirt? Did we erase them, or did they erase themselves? In 2010, the news of the Denisovans hit the world, and with its release, it rattled anthropology to its core. Imagine scientists coming to announce that they missed a previously unknown group of hominins. For decades, the story was simple. Humans evolved in Africa, Neanderthals lived in Europe, and the two occasionally crossed paths. Clean, neat. But the Denisovans ruined that neatness. From the finger bone found in Denisovan Cave, Siberia, a new mitochondrial DNA was uncovered. Suddenly, there wasn't just one lost cousin. There was another hiding in plain sight. Even worse, this lost and found breed was just as influential. To top the news, the Denisovans were not a fringe group. They were global players. Since their DNA was found in more than one place, they most likely shaped the immune systems, bodies, and even the minds of entire populations. And yet, their fossils are almost non-existent. How could a species so important vanish so completely? It's as if they were scrubbed away from the record. That's the puzzle we're about to unravel. When scientists pieced together the Denisovan story, they noticed something strange. First, they did find a few pieces of evidence, but these were not limited to the Denisovan cave. They found more across Asia, leading us to believe that the Denisovans had a solid stand, and there are probably more remains waiting to be found. But it doesn't end there. The fossils we do have, like the Xiahe mandible from Tibet and the massive Harbin skull from northeastern China, don't look like scraps from fragile cave dwellers. They look powerful. For example, the Harbin skull is so huge that it earned the nickname Dragon Man. It has a massive cranial cavity, heavy brow ridges, and a robust jaw. One look, and you'd see that these weren't small, delicate humans. They were built like fortresses. What about the Xiahe jaw? They are twice as thick as a modern one, with molars so large they look like they belong to a different creature altogether. The Denisovan brain case was massive, estimated to be nearly 20% larger than the human brain case. Not just bigger in raw size, but wired in ways we don't fully understand. Could that mean Denisovans weren't just another branch of humanity, but the superior humans history forgot? Now, bigger doesn't always equal smarter, that much is true. But their DNA tells a deeper story. Within it, scientists have found unique neural development pathways. This discovery hints at brains tuned differently from ours. And what might that mean? It suggests Denisovans could process memory faster, recognize patterns more clearly, and think with a kind of efficiency we can only imagine. Picture a mind storing details like a hard drive, recalling them with near photographic accuracy. And here's where science meets myth. Across Asia, legends speak of giants with extraordinary memory and wisdom. That is, beings who guided humans and seemed to command hidden forces. Were these just campfire stories? Or are they traces of Denisovans remembered as more than human? Mainstream science fights this thought, but when you place the evidence together, the skulls, the brain volume, the genetic markers, it's hard not to wonder, did these ancient humans simply outclass us, not only in body but in mind? And if they did, why are they gone? Let's step outside the cave for a moment. Across Asia, oral traditions describe massive beings who once walked among smaller humans. In Tibet, shamans speak of sky-born ancestors who towered over ordinary men. In Mongolia, they tell stories of robust warriors who lived in mountain fortresses. Even the Bible whispers of Nephilim giants wiped out in a cataclysm. You don't think this is a mere coincidence, do you? Now let's layer in the scientific evidence found. Harbin's Dragon Man skull, the Xiahe jaw, and the random oversized molars discovered in the cave. Add the fact that Denisovans interbred with our ancestors, leaving fragments of their DNA inside us. Suddenly, the traditional tales no longer sound so far-fetched. Have you ever been short of breath hiking a mountain? That's because at high altitudes your oxygen levels plummet. Most humans struggle beyond 10,000 feet, as our blood just can't grab enough oxygen. But did you know it's different for Tibetans? They stroll around at 14,000 feet like it's nothing. Their secret is not in breath training, it's a unique variant present in their DNA. In 2010, a group of researchers led by Rasmus Nielsen discovered something massive. They saw that Tibetans carry a mutation called EPAS1, which allows blood to process oxygen in thin air. What's shocking is that this gene didn't come from us, normal humans. It came from the Denisovans. Upon further testing on the discovered remains, the same DNA was found on the Denisovans. This means that these mysterious humans had already mastered life at extreme altitudes tens of thousands of years ago. Unbelievable. Picture it. While our ancestors hugged warm valleys, Denisovans climbed icy mountains and thrived in environments we'd normally consider unlivable. To them, Everest-like conditions were no biggie because they could thrive there. In a world where even the best of humans are still struggling to adapt to normal weather conditions, the adaptation level of the Denisovans has trumped the harshest situations. But oxygen wasn't their only superpower. Denisovans also passed down disease resistance genes that still protect us today. Studies show they carried genetic traits to fight the pathogens that plagued early human populations. Indigenous groups in Asia and Oceania inherited these shields, giving them natural resistance to illnesses others couldn't withstand. So while Homo sapiens were wiped out by waves of plagues, Denisovans walked through like it was a mild cold. Their immune system wasn't just good, it was elite. It gets more interesting. Some of these genes are even linked to enhanced responses in modern humans, making us tougher against certain diseases, but also more prone to autoimmune conditions. Sometimes, it seems almost like we inherited too much firepower. Was this just random evolution? Or does it hint at deliberate genetic refinement that started with the Denisovans? And then there's the most enticing possibility, lifespan. Genetic studies reveal Denisovan variants linked to neural resilience and slower cell degradation. In plain terms, the Denisovans may have aged more slowly than we do now. Some researchers speculate Denisovans could live longer, stay sharper, and endure physical extremes without the breakdowns that modern humans face. Combine that with their robust frames, altitude mastery, and pathogen resistance, and you have humans upgraded for endurance. If Denisovans had these superpowers, super lungs, super immunity, maybe even super longevity, then they weren't just our random distant relatives. They were the real deal. A possible super civilization. In 2008, Russian archaeologists were sifting through Denisova Cave when they stumbled on something that made jaws drop. A polished chloritolite bracelet. At first glance, it looked like jewelry from a medieval noblewoman. But radiocarbon dating placed it at 40,000 to 70,000 years old. This bracelet wasn't just polished. It had a perfectly drilled hole, likely for a strap or ornament to pass through it. This begs the question: how was such a sophisticated bracelet made in that ancient time? Experts admitted this level of craftsmanship required rotary drilling technology. Yes, the same technology that humans didn't master until thousands of years later. Yet here it was, sitting in Siberia, built by Denisovans. Was this just a piece of decoration? Or can we agree that this is proof that Denisovans had precision engineering tools completely out of place for the Stone Age? If you ask us, it's like finding an iPhone in an Egyptian tomb. The object doesn't just challenge the timeline, it completely shatters it. Then came the discovery that pushed the envelope even further. In 2016, archaeologists found another stunner from the Denisovan cave. They unearthed a 7-centimeter bone needle with a carved eye. If that sounds mundane, brace yourself. Dating back over 50,000 years, the needle earned the reputation of the oldest sewing needle in the world. And it wasn't made by Homo sapiens, it was Denisovan. That means while our ancestors were draping themselves in animal hides, Denisovans were making their clothing with precision tools. Think about it. A needle with an eye requires planning, symmetry, and skill. It also tells of their cultural sophistication. These advanced people were determined not to accept the weather as it came. Instead, they designed clothes to combat it. What does that say about their society? A group organized enough to produce tailored garments must have had roles, skills, and perhaps even trade systems. Doesn't sound like your average caveman, does it? It sounds like a civilization far ahead of its time. Little wonder. History books insist they shouldn't exist. But Denisovans didn't stop at tools. They also left behind ostrich egg shell beads, all carefully crafted and polished. They carved engraved patterns into stone fragments. They shaped pendants from fossilized teeth. Our best guess is that these were symbols. They meant something. Symbolic art implies language, communication, and even spirituality. It's one thing to make a spear to hunt with. It's another to carve a design that speaks to identity, belief, or memory. That kind of expression shows higher order thinking, and this is the kind we once believed that only modern humans were capable of. But with the level of discoveries and technicality we've seen so far, the Denisovans had so much genius. Now, let's take a quick dive into the stone mysteries across Asia. Deep in the Siberian wilderness lies Mount Sharia. Mount Sharia is the home to stone blocks so massive that even cranes today would struggle to move them. Some weigh over 3,000 tons, yet they're stacked like Lego bricks. They also have fine, flat, right-angled surfaces consisting of granite. To explain the origin of these blocks, historians dismiss it as natural geology. But there is something you should know. The site sits within the ancient Denisovan range. What could this mean? Across Mongolia and Central Asia, we see the same thing. Perfectly cut slabs and enigmatic megaliths in regions tied to Denisovan presence. These aren't scattered stones, but engineered placements. And they appear in places where our ancestors lacked the capacity or equipment to erect such structures. If Denisovans had the brains and brawn we've already seen, could they have been the hands behind these impossible structures? Here's where it gets even stranger. Many of these megalithic sites aren't random piles of rock. They are also astronomically aligned. At Gornaya Shoria, certain walls face cardinal points with uncanny accuracy. In Mongolia, megalithic standing stones align with solstice sunrise and sunset. That's cosmic geometry carved into stone. Think about it. We're told Denisovans were cave dwellers with basic tools, yet someone in their territory was measuring the skies and encoding their findings in architecture. This is a skill that requires math, observation, and generational knowledge. It's the same precision we see in Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, and the Mayan calendar. So who taught whom? Did later civilizations invent these alignments on their own? Or were they following a blueprint left behind by Denisovans? If these so-called primitives knew the sky well enough to encode it in stone, then history has sold us a very small piece of a much larger puzzle. Don't you agree? Now let's connect the dots. What if Denisovans weren't just isolated mountain dwellers, but the original master builders? Imagine them as the engineers whose knowledge flowed outward, influencing Egyptian pyramid design, Incan stonework, and Mayan astronomy in the process. It sounds outrageous until you realize the similarities. Giant, impossible stones cut with precision, structures aligned to the stars, cultural tales of sky gods and giant teachers who came before. The fingerprints are littered everywhere. Maybe that's why megaliths appear suddenly in the archaeological record, without any trial and error phase. One day, humanity discovers stone engineering at an advanced level, as if someone handed them the blueprint. And maybe the Denisovans did hand them. Picture this: a group of Denisovans working together on a massive stone project thousands of years ago. No written language or shouting across the quarry, yet the work moves with smooth coordination, as if they're following the same invisible script. How could this have happened? Some researchers propose that perhaps they used telepathic communication. It sounds unbelievable, but consider this. Denisovan brains were 20% bigger than ours, with genetic hints of unique neural wiring. Scientists can't say exactly what that meant, but it could have allowed forms of information processing we don't fully grasp today. This reshapes how we picture them. Maybe Denisovans didn't rely on long written records or alphabets. Perhaps their advanced memory and cognition allowed a kind of direct transmission of knowledge, not telepathy in the sci-fi sense, but a level of human connection and shared understanding that feels almost wireless compared to us. But this is the ultimate twist. If this super DNA was passed down through the ages, it supposedly lies in bits amongst us today. But we are yet to see the capabilities fully exercised. So what happened? Did we lose those abilities through evolution? Or were they taken from us in the chaos of survival? If Denisovans truly lived with psychic communication, healing energies, and supercomputer minds, then maybe humanity didn't evolve upward from them. Maybe we regressed. Then there's the Tibetan highlands. At altitudes where most humans would collapse from oxygen deprivation, Tibetan villagers farm, cook, and raise families without breaking a sweat. Their secret? The EPAS1 gene variant, a direct gift from Denisovans. This mutation fine-tunes red blood cells to process oxygen in thin air. This leaves Tibetans rocking the title of the undisputed champions of high-altitude living. Without Denisovan DNA, scaling Everest would have been impossible. But think about what this means. While our ancestors were gasping for air in the valleys, Denisovans were building life above the clouds. They were thriving where modern humans couldn't. And somehow, that genetic superpower was passed on to the Tibetans like a living signature from Denisovans. It's one thing to say Denisovans lived in the mountains. It's another to prove they engineered survival at altitudes that break us. Now this is where things get really provocative. Some researchers claim that Denisovan DNA doesn't just affect survival, it also influences cognition. Studies hint that populations with higher Denisovan DNA sometimes show stronger memory retention, problem-solving, and spatial awareness. Can't be a mere coincidence, can it? Of course, mainstream science treads carefully here. Nobody wants to suggest that intelligence varies by ancestry. But when you step back, you can see the full picture. If Denisovans truly had better neural pathways, surely the fragments of their genius could show in modern populations. Here's the part that makes archaeologists scratch their heads. Denisovans thrived across Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. Then suddenly, poof, around 40,000 years ago, their traces vanished almost overnight. And guess what else was happening at that exact time? Homo sapiens was spreading into Asia. Indeed, history has a way of telling the same story. Whenever two human species cross paths, only one walks away. Fossil evidence shows Denisovans were flourishing right up until our ancestors arrived. Then, silence. No tools, no fossils, no cultural traces. As if someone hit the delete button on an entire species. Did they fade away naturally? Or did we play a direct role in erasing them? If Denisovans truly had brains, brawn, and technology that surpassed ours, then the idea that they simply died out feels convenient. Too convenient. Genetics already tells us something shocking. Denisovans didn't just disappear, they interbred with us. Modern populations in Asia and Oceania carry their DNA, which means our ancestors didn't just meet them as acquaintances. Instead, they shared as much as they could: fire, food, and families. But what happens when neighbors aren't equal? Trouble looms. Imagine two species vying for the same territory. One stronger, smarter, and better adapted. The other is numerous, more aggressive, and armed with a talent for war. That's a perfect recipe for conflict. Some researchers suggest Homo sapiens may have outcompeted Denisovans. Through the use of violence, resources, or sheer numbers, they might have won. But others whisper about something darker, a prehistoric genocide. If Denisovans were a super civilization, maybe our ancestors didn't defeat them with brains. What if their weapon of warfare was ice-cold brutality? And what better way to erase a rival than to wipe their story from history? But what if the Denisovans weren't defeated at all? This is another theory about the Denisovan disappearance. We've heard the stories told of wise beings who retreated into mountains, caves, and even underground realms when lesser humans spread across the land. Even Tibetan myths speak of hidden kingdoms like Shambhala. Also, Mongolian tales describe ancestors disappearing into caverns, promising to return when the world is ready. What if the Denisovans saw the writing on the wall? What if they saw humanity's chaos and chose to withdraw rather than fight? Around 12,800 years ago, the Earth hit a wall. Temperatures took a deep dive, ice sheets collapsed, and sudden floods swept across continents. This is what scientists call the Younger Dryas event. Mainstream archaeology frames it as a natural climate swing, but for alternative historians, it's the smoking gun. This is the catastrophe that could have erased whole civilizations, including Denisovans. Imagine mountain fortresses buried under landslides, river valleys drowned overnight, and populations scattered to the winds. From the Sumerian flood to Noah's Ark to Native American world resets theories, they all share the same story. The Earth was wiped clean. If Denisovans had truly built advanced societies, this cataclysm could explain why almost nothing remains. Their megastructures broken into rubble, their knowledge drowned in a single night, and their people forced into hiding. Maybe they weren't erased by us, but by the planet itself. If a whole super-civilization could be erased from history, what else have we lost? And more importantly, what else is still hidden beneath our feet waiting to be found? What do you think? Share your theories with us in the comments. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again.